internal to my business functioning or to my work, but it has a relationship. There's something I learned from it. And I learned that everywhere people are watching you. I'll give another example. I am involved in Nottingham University, and I went to meet the provost for research. And I went to meet her to talk about what my company does, and because I was asked just to introduce myself. 2 hours later, we had talked about teaching philosophy. We had talked about our mutual interest for cats, for food, for so many things. I actually had a job interview, but it wasn't scheduled as one. I actually got a job offer not long after that particular discussion. And it was simply because we were able to talk and we were able to share. So sometimes the circumstances are seen as something, but actually they have multiple purposes. Think about your skills and achievements. Now, many people say, but I don't know what my skills or what my achievements will be. I'm too new in my career. I don't agree with that. Everybody has achieved something by the time they hit university. So by the time you graduate, certainly. Maybe, when I was younger, my dad had a stroke and he stopped driving a car. And in order to get his license back, he had to relearn to drive. I taught my father how to drive a car. That's a skill. That's an achievement. That was something, I taught a 70-year-old man how to drive a manual car without losing my cool, to add to that. That's an achievement. So it may not relate to the job, but what it showcases is patience, perseverance, ability to communicate a complex idea, to be able to work at different levels, to be able to work with somebody who is in your life, an authority figure, but to mentor and to guide them. And this is important. We have to be able to have these stories, these ready explanations about the skills and the achievements we've got. And we should think about our personal growth. So what are the experiences that have helped you grow and develop? And this is usually a question I ask because I want to see how people think. I'm like, what's happened during your childhood, during your adolescence that has taught you a valuable lesson? And again, it's not job related because I know probably you don't have work experience yet. But if you were involved in something and you learned from it and you changed your behavior, that's actually something you can share with us. It shows me your attitude. It shows me your personality. It shows me your flexibility. And those are all things that I really want to be able to see. Go to the next slide, please. Something and you learned from it and you changed your behavior. Oops. There we go. I'm always interested in problem solving and critical thinking abilities. This is a terminology, and I mean no disrespect to the two academics here, because I sit on your side of the blackboard as well. But problem solving and critical thinking is often a term at university that's overused. It's a bit heavy. At the end of the day, I want to know that you can brainstorm and think outside of the box. Also a cliche, so I apologize. I want to know that you can think about something and come up with alternatives. For example, let's take a very simple thing. I have some chicken and I have some tomato sauce in my fridge, and I'm hungry. Now, what do? Do I marinate the chicken with the tomato sauce? Do I hang the chicken outside and then dip it with tomato sauce later, like a chicken McNugget? Or do I stuff the chicken with tomato sauce? Then how can I cook it? I can pan fry it. I can boil it. I can do so many things. I can make a tomato soup with chicken. Now, that's a really bad example, but I don't think it's that bad. When we're brainstorming, or when you're expressing brainstorming, the ability to think differently, I just want to know that you can generate ideas. They don't all have to be perfect. At my level, or at our level as the three academics in the room, they've got to be close to perfect. But early in our careers, we just have to be able to showcase we can think. We're not stuck. It's like, oh, I have to have chicken. I have to cook it this way. There are multiple ways we can do it, except we do not have raw chicken. That's bad for us. We want to understand the critical thinking process. I want to know that you are capable of making a judgment call. I don't have to agree with your judgment call. Okay? That's not what it's about. I don't want somebody who's like a yes man, always going to follow what I say. I want somebody who can look at something and say, I don't think this is the best way we could do this. Or I want somebody who say, I see a problem with this. How do we solve that problem? Which then comes back to brainstorming. So it's a win-win for us. Thirdly, it's collaboration skills. No matter what job you are in, no matter what profession you are in, you have to deal with other people. There will always be an interchange or exchange of ideas. There's always got to be some form of collaboration. It doesn't mean we have to be a big team of people who sit around and do everything. It might be one-on-one. But we've got to have the skills, and we've got to demonstrate the skills that we are capable of comfortably working with different people. And let's go a little bit deeper. We have to show that we are capable of working with different kinds of people, whether that be ethnicities or geographies, different age groups. All of that we need to be able to demonstrate through our storytelling, through our examples, that we have that ability. When I see that you can work or you can communicate well with people that are close to retirement age, people who are younger than yourselves, people who are your age, people who are senior within an organization, as well as people who are entry level within the organization, that leaves a strong impression. So those are the narratives we need to be able to think about and have prepared for ourselves. Have the next slide, please. I kind of touched on this, but let's sort of expand. Being cultural fit and team player. Slightly two different things, because cultural fit has two meanings to me. One, there's organizational culture. It is about how you'll fit into, as they say, I think the definition of organizational culture from the 1980s was how we do things around here. This is one of the early definitions by Henry Mintzberg, if I'm not mistaken. But A, you're going to fit into the organizational culture. B, you're going to fit into the culture, the ethnic culture that you are part of. So I'm a great example for this. I am born in New Zealand. I've spent over half of my life living in Asia. Before the pandemic, I moved to Australia. And having spent at that time close to 15 years living in Malaysia, going back to Australia was a cultural shock. Oh wow, things were just so different, whether it be driving, whether it be how people communicate to each other. I had to learn and I had to unwind. I teach in India. I teach in Eastern Europe. In Eastern Europe, good afternoon, how are you? let's get started. Very cut and dry, very lovely people, but they just don't have the, I call it fluffiness, the friendliness, the interpersonal relationship. You know, in Malaysia, you'll sit down, you'll have a drink, you'll chit chat, you'll spend the first few minutes asking how people are and all of this. Go to Romania, let's get down to business. Tea will be served. Point A. And in Australia, it's totally different because you'll get this whole super friendly thing. Now, cultural fit is important because it's not necessarily how we fit immediately. It's our potential to adapt. Can I fit in? So when I interview people, usually I'll interview with my business partner. My business partner is Malaysian. So when I interview people, no matter where they're from, unless they're from New Zealand or Australia, one of my questions is, how will you deal with the white man? And I do it very blatantly because my personality is different. I say what I want when I want, and I don't always care what other people think. Sometimes I do it for reaction, sometimes I do it because I needed to do it. But one of my early questions is, how are you going to cope with me? Because I know I'm very different to everybody else. And it's important. You may not go into an organization where you're dealing with too many people from other cultures. But if you are, you must think through this. To be or to have the right cultural fit, which includes organizational culture, to be a team player, we care about a positive attitude. So I see that through how you approach me, how you answer my questions, how you take the initiative to expand. It's not just let me answer the questions you ask, but how I take the initiative, say, you know what, let me share with you something that happened so that I'm seeing more of your personality. I want to see flexibility so that you can change. And often, this is why I ask the question, how will you cope with me? Because I'm not interested in your skills to do the job. If, I can see that from your CV. I already know you have the skills. I want to see whether you're going to work well with us as a group. So I ask questions to see the flexibility. I want to see whether you will contradict yourself. So always keep in mind, if you're being asked some questions, are you actually giving the same answer or are you giving different answers? And Donald Trump is a great example of giving different answers every time you ask a question. Don't be a Donald. The third thing, and right from my first slide, I talked about potential. I want to see potential. It's leadership potential. In 2 years' time, do I think you have the potential to run what you're doing now? Could you be your own supervisor in 2 years' time? Now, I say 2 years because for my industry, it needs that amount of time for you to develop skills to reach that. Every industry is different. But I want to see that you can be a leader. Have the next slide, please. So I want a proactive attitude, a willingness to learn and grow. And proactive comes through or is demonstrated to me in a few different ways. It's questions that you ask. If, when I'm conducting an interview, if I have to say, do you have any questions for me? I think it's a failed interview. When I get to the end of the interview and you haven't said, hey, Craig, I wanted to ask you about this. It can be a silly little question, I don't mind. But if you haven't been proactive and you haven't asked a question at that stage, I consider it failed. So make sure before you walk into the interview, you already have questions in mind. As I said, they don't have to be profound, groundbreaking, cutting-edge questions. but they do have to be questions. And it can be, oh, what would my future colleagues say about working here? Acceptable. What professional development opportunities can I get? And that kind of links to my point number 3, because ask questions and be proactive is one thing. Showcase that you've tried to learn outside of the university classroom. That's always important. I learn through micro-credentials. I learn through going to other people's presentations, because there's always opportunities. And it's nice to be able to say, well, I went to a couple of webinars that really helped me think about something. And that's a really positive thing to be able to do. Have the next slide, please. So let's move into crafting your narrative, because everything I've said up until now is how you prepare. And I'm also aware I've probably only got about 10 minutes or so left. So let me go through this part. But this is crafting your narrative. This is about you being you and you showing me who you are. I have the next slide. Great. So this is about the art of storytelling. Now, storytelling is a really, I want to say a mean word, because we always think of storytelling as sitting down with a storybook, talking to kids, doing pantomime, all sorts of artistic expression. But actually, storytelling is simply 3 very simple communication skills. Connecting emotionally. How do we make the other person like us? Or let's rephrase that. How do we make the other person not dislike us? You know, we meet somebody, the first time we think, oh, I do not like that person. That's common. It's human nature, it happens. We have to make sure that doesn't happen in an interview. So how do we become warm? I do that by changing the tone of my voice. I do that by telling stories, asking people, just trying to show an interest, but also showing that, you know, I want to be part of this industry. I have an interest in this industry. Connecting emotionally is not about you and I are going to be next best friends. We don't go to work to make friends. If it happens, fantastic. But it's simply about, you know what, we're on the same wavelength. I like talking with you. That's important. We want to engage with examples. Storytelling is about sharing how we learned, how we improved ourselves, what we gained from an experience. It's not about winning the competition, but my story was better than yours. It is not that. It's simply about how I gained something, a new perspective on something from doing something. And engaging with examples is us answering questions, but being able to say, you know what, it was done like this, and this is what I gained from it. Not just yes, no, oh, I want, or I think it will be about. Really go that extra mile. And the third part to storytelling is maintaining cohesion. And cohesion, or being things that sort of stick together, is on two levels. One, we don't answer the same question 3 different ways. Cohesion is about having the same direction. But 2, maintaining cohesion is about having the same personality every single time. And I suddenly switched my personality then for a second, which will have you say, well, am I getting Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type example? Am I getting, split personalities? Maintaining cohesion is having that positive vibe, that attitude that comes through, that friendliness, the whole thing. And this is where my story with the cafe comes in. When a potential staff member, an interviewee comes in, they order their coffee, which I tell them to do, and I purposely come a few minutes late just so some observations can happen. If there is a disconnect between the way in which they order their coffee and communicate with the staff at the cafe, and the way in which they communicate with me when I arrive and I talk to them, they've failed at storytelling. It's weird because they're telling the story to two different people, but they don't know that. Or they think that. They don't realize that actually you're just telling one story. So who are you being fake to? So that's important. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? So here's where the concept of personal branding comes in. And you've probably seen a lot online about developing your own personal brand. For some people, developing a personal brand means having a larger-than-life social media persona, being available on LinkedIn, being a thought leader, doing all this sort of stuff. That's really lovely, but no. Personal brand is just you showcasing what you stand for as an individual. It's your values, it's your way of doing things, it's your personality. Now, my first point is discover your unique selling points. I have a lot of people, especially in my role as an academic, I've had a lot of people say, well, I'm about to graduate, but I don't have anything unique. That's wrong. Every single one of us here has something unique to offer. And a question I always ask is, look, I know what I can teach you if you come to work for me. What can you teach me? And most candidates, even if they're early to mid-career, most candidates get stuck with an answer for that because of, I don't know, you should know everything. Well, maybe I do, but there's a lot I don't. Think about how can you answer that question. Actually, what's unique that you could bring to the table? So let's give an example. If you're applying for a job with me, maybe you can help me better understand cultural nuances of certain clients, for example, or you can help me communicate with a different audience. A great one for your generation to my generation, TikTok. As much as I dislike TikTok, if you say to me, look, actually, I'm really comfortable with using this, and I really feel that we could use this to represent particular clients, I'm going to listen to you, because even though I dislike TikTok and related technology, I know it has value. So I'm going to listen to you, and you're the expert in the room, not me. You're the expert for that. And there's going to be something for each and every one of us that we can say, you know what, this is something that I've got that other people can't. It might be linguistic skills, it might be the way in which you work, the way in which you think, it may be your understanding of a software, it can be any number of things. But you need to know what is unique for you. And you need to have that ready to say, you know what's different about me? This is what I do. So I'll give an example for me. A lot of people, I do a lot of classes online for research students, postgraduate research students. And I always ask people, why do you come to my classes? You know, I'm teaching the same stuff everybody else does. And the feedback I get is, I make it fun, I make it simple, and I speak slow enough that for those who don't have English as their native language, they can understand me without having to ask questions. I choose words that are easy to understand. Now, that's my USP. That's something I can say, you know what? I go into a university, I want to do this. Actually, I can communicate to your students. That's a unique selling point. Showcase your value proposition. Actually, how can you help my company get better? I once had an interviewee that, I'll be fair, the first job interview was so bad The poor guy, he drove from Ipoh to KL for a job interview. The interview was so terrible, he went off. I said to my colleague afterwards, and this is many years ago, I said to my colleague afterwards, either he's really stupid or really nervous. And we looked and he said, the application email was great. And this was before ChatGPT and all of that, so he wrote it himself. He was just really flustered and nervous. So I did a call with him the next day and re-interviewed him. But what made the interview so bad is I said, oh, what can you do for this company? And his response is, I can revolutionize the way you organize your business. Yeah, right. You're not going to save the world, not as an early career person. But what you can do is, I can help my teammates to understand this concept better, or I can bring in new connections, or I can, share the latest techniques that I've been taught at university and help people see new things. It's about being incremental, small growth stages, not I'm going to transform the business, because if you can transform my business, I'm retiring and I'll let you do that, but I know it won't happen. The third one is become memorable. And this is hard because most of us are so nervous in any situation that we actually forget about how that's going to happen. But we have to find a way that people remember who we are. And that can be achieved, but you've got to think, what do you do? I try to do it through personality. I try to do it through the level of detail I offer in a discussion, but we're each unique. I had a staff member. He was a staff member of mine for 5 years. When he came to the interview, honestly, he dressed like Robin Hood. He had a green felt fedora and a green waistcoat. He was professionally dressed, but he's certainly different from the other candidates. And he became memorable because the way he dressed is something I could never forget. And he was perfectly professional, fantastic staff member. How he dressed was perfectly acceptable for our industry. But that was what made me remember him. If he had turned up like everybody else in a white shirt and black pants, he would be very forgettable. So that was his way. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? I think we're almost towards the end.
Yes, but just want to ask, because it's already 2:48 here.
Sure.
And you have another 4 slides. We'd like to continue because we also want to have a Q&A session with the students.
Let me have 30 seconds a slide, and then we can do the Q&A. No problem. Right. So in the next one, it's about highlight your achievements. To be fair, I think I've talked about that. Achievements are not on the job. Achievements are what you've done in life. So you'll always be able to do that. The final point on that is relevance is key. If you're telling a story, if you're answering a question, just make sure that I get the link between your lived experience and my business. If we move into the next question, the next slide, mastering communication techniques. It is simple. It's active listening. It's body language. Never be afraid to use body language. Powerful storytelling, we've told. Let's go to the next slide. I promise you I'd do this in under 2 minutes. So let's go to the next slide. Tailoring your narrative. So do research the company. Align your experiences. Think about the things that you've happened that might in your life that relate. Show genuine interest. I can tell if you want a job for the money versus if you want a job to really grow and have or be part of a community of practice. It's very easy to do that. You need to be able to adapt to different interview formats. Every interviewer is different, but we've got to be able to find ways, and it takes us a few minutes, but we can figure that one out fast. I think there's a question on that, so we'll come to that. Number 5 is really what I want to emphasize out of everything. You be you. Don't answer what you expect they want to hear. Show us who you are. Never be afraid to show us who you are. Unless you're a psychopath, then perhaps we have to be careful. But in reality, I want to see that personality. I want to see that I'm going to enjoy working with you and I'm going to find it comfortable. Practice is obvious. If I can head to the very last slide, and I'll rush through that. The power of your narrative comes from leaving a lasting impression, which we've talked about. A well-crafted narrative is the key to differentiating yourself from everybody else. May the narrative be with you. It's a bit of a terrible Star Wars throwback, but storytelling is much more powerful than answering questions. And a job interview is not about answering questions. It's about showcasing why you are a good person for them. And fitting the pieces together is really both using your ideas to show people why you're good. But even if you fail at the interview, or I want to say, if you don't get the job, what you learned from the experience, you can use for the next experience. And that's very important. So thank you for bearing with me. I know I've gone a little over time. If there are questions, I'm very happy to address those for everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Craig J. Selvey, for your insightful sharing with us today. So I would like to open for Q&A session, maybe from the audience, the students. Let me see. We have all right, Doctor. This is from this is in our chat box. So can I just read the question? This is from Tishalini. Okay, what would be a good way of telling the recruiter that I will make a great recruit?
Okay, so sometimes don't always be humble. Say, look, I want this opportunity. I think you'll find my personality fits. I am hardworking. Some of this is the ordinary stuff. It's not the words you use. It's how you back that up with the behavior through the interview. If you come into an interview and say, I'm going to be a fantastic employee for you, and then every time you answer a question, say, yes, no, do I really have to do that for the job? Your body language and your words don't match. The body language and the words have to match. So you demonstrate that through your ongoing actions every single time. That's important.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, I just want to add one more comment.
Okay.
I promise you, when you are yourself at an interview, not nervous, thinking I've got to be somebody else or I've got to show a certain perspective. When you can be yourself, your personality will get support. People will like you. It may not happen in every job. And honestly, if somebody interviewing you and you don't get along, that's a job you don't want to have. So move to the next one, but you'll find it.
Okay. We have another one question here from Nurin Rash. Okay, we have two questions. All right. First, from Nurin Rashika. So the question is, how can a fresh graduate show we are flexible and adapt well to a company's culture and work style?
So I would actually do that by asking them about their culture and asking them about workflows, because you don't know how you'll adapt yet. But if you say, look, what's a typical day in the office like for us? What will it be? What kind of flexibility do you want us to work overtime? Do you want us to do work? Are you comfortable with remote learning or hybrid working? So fixed in one way. When you ask questions, your reaction to their answers actually will demonstrate actually your your personal original intent. And when you say, look, I'm comfortable with doing overtime. When you say, I'd like to do as much overtime as possible because I'm desperate for money, that's not a good thing. But when you say, look, I'm okay with doing overtime, what's the average expectation of overtime for somebody in this position? Things like that. It's asking questions and it's giving feedback at the same time. A job interview is not always them asking you. It's got to be give and take. And you should be asking, and by asking questions, you show interest, but you also indirectly tell us about what constrains you, what enables you to be flexible. So there's some good things to that.
Doctor, we have another 2 questions here. Is it okay? Okay,
Yeah,
so
please.
This is from Ahmad Akid. Students, you can actually ask the question to Dr. Selvi yourself. You don't have to use the chat box actually. Okay, what are the main aspects that I have to consider to be able to adapt to different interview formats?
It's actually about preparation and practice. Let's be honest, we can go into any conversation with different people and it's going to be different people, different personalities. So think about the difference between talking to your parents, your grandparents, your friends, your classmates, people at a government office. Each one of that is a different circumstance, a different level of thinking. It's the same for job interviews. For us, it's the preparation. We want to understand a little bit about the person. I stalk people on LinkedIn. I want to see the type of posts they make. As an employer, by the way, we stalk people on Facebook and Instagram. We want to see what they're like. And there's some research from National University of Singapore about 3 years ago that actually looked over 80% of potential employers already know what you're like from your social media platforms before you have even been interviewed. We have the flexibility. We already have it through social interaction. We just need to prepare a little bit. We need to research the people and we need to think. We take the first couple of minutes to let them talk. What sort of language are they using? Are they serious? Are they informal? Are they warm or are they quite reserved? And then we think, okay, if this was a normal social situation, how will I reply? Same. It's not difficult. It's certainly not rocket science, but it just requires us to listen a little bit more carefully. And I keep saying it, don't be nervous. We've just got to find a way to check, I think we call it check the nerves at the door. Go in and just be what we can.
All right. Okay. From Nisha. Okay. The question is, what should I do if I am interviewing with a company that I am not sure I am a good fit for? And what should I do if I do not know an answer to a question during interview?
Okay. If you don't know the answer to a question, be honest. Say, look, I actually don't know. I'm not sure how I can answer that. Is it possible? Let me think about it, and either I can answer it before the end of the interview or I can send you an email. Just be honest. I mean, I don't expect you to have an answer to everything. If you're unsure about a company, at interview stage, it doesn't matter. If you're unsure, just go try. If they offer you a job and you're unsure, my strategy is to say, can I come and spend half a day in the office and maybe shadow a colleague, follow a colleague around and see what the working environment and the workload is like? And then you'll know. You go into the office and it's crazy. You'll be like, okay, this is not for me, or, oh, I really love this. So that one, the first part of that question is really for when we've got a job offer.
Mhm.
I personally believe in intuition. If you don't think something's good, don't worry about it. Just leave it, move on. Don't waste unless you want them.
Okay, Doctor, one last question. This is from Wano Farah. She is actually our language instructor. Okay, she said here, my question may not be directly related to interview, but I reckon some part is applicable for job setting. In Malaysia, there is a situation in which not many youth are enrolling in university. Some argue it's because they prefer to be social media influencer. Some say it's to avoid that. So what is your opinion on this? Is having tertiary level qualification important today?
So I had a similar conversation with my partner at lunch before. We were talking about qualifications. And, I'm a university professor. Of course, qualifications are important. But let's be honest, micro-credentials at tertiary level are brilliant. Companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers do not require you to have a degree, but they do require you to demonstrate you have learned things. So having a degree is a cultural thing for most of us across the world. I don't think a degree is the most essential thing, but if you don't engage in some form of lifelong learning, whether that be micro credentials, community education, listening to TED Talks on YouTube, then you've failed. You've got to constantly learn. Having a qualification, I'll give you an example. My doctorate is in economics. I'm a specialist in Southeast Asian business history. Totally useless. I don't teach that. I teach educational leadership. I teach communication. Nothing related to my qualifications whatsoever. A qualification is one thing. It's what you do with the skills you get. So I want to say, yeah, you should stay in school because I do believe that. But at the end of the day, we can't always afford to do so. And if we can't, we've got to find ways that we can demonstrate we are still learning and staying current. And micro-credentials will help us with that.
Right, okay. So I think that's all we have for Q&A session. All right, so thank you, Dr. Craig J. Selvey. In summary, I think what I can sum up here, there are 3 P's that you need to know in order for you to prepare for your job interview. Number 1 is your personality, your potential, and yes, preparation is important so that you can master and you can the power of narrative right just now. Okay, so Dr. Zuraina would like to say anything lastly?
Yeah. Thanks, Lisa. And of course, thank you, our guest speaker, Dr. Craig. Okay, so amazing. It was really fruitful. Okay, so we really hope that you can come to UMPSA. Of course, we are going to have remember you talk about personal branding. I think it's just a topic that we need to understand, and we need to not only understand, but actually, how are we, as a lecturer, as lecturers, how are we going to actually have this personal branding, because we thought that personal branding is for this group of people. Lecturers may not have to have personal branding, so that's the thing.
Lecturers have to.
Very much. So I think that is and it's something else that we are going to do. So perhaps I'll be talking to my colleague, and we would like to invite you again face to face, Doctor.
I'd love that.
Yes,
very much to both. Thank you for inviting me here today. It's great to be able to talk with students in different places around the world. Thank you for the fantastic questions. Sometimes nobody asks a question. I'm like, even alive. So I really appreciate the questions. Do connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always on there. I'm always happy to address questions as well. But thank you very much for having me.
All right, Doctor, before we go, so everyone, can you switch on your camera so that we can have a group photo session? All right.
Fantastic.
So,
This is how I know who stayed awake during a session. If the camera gets turned on at the end, you know you didn't put them to sleep.
so all of them, they are the instructors, students. Students, where are you,
The students are very shy, you know.
I know
All
what
right,
it's
okay,
like.
ID, thank you, ID. Okay, any more? Come on, guys. We would like to see your faces. Okay, only have 6 on screen. All right, okay. Okay, let me screenshot. All right, okay. Okay, we have more. Okay, okay. Smile, look at the camera. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Nisha, put your camera up a little bit. I only see your scarf.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, one more time. One more time. All right. Okay. Look at the camera. All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I think we are done.
We're done.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
everyone, for your participation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please
Thank
do-
you, Doctor.
please send me the
for your
photos,
time.
Raina. I'd really love to have those as well.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Take care,
Professor.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Wonderful
Bye-bye.
session, by the way. Wonderful
All right.
session. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.